Program Director, the Executive Mayor of Ekurhuleni Metro, the Honourable Councillor Mzwandile Masina, accounting officers and heads of departments, invited guests, delegates to this Africa M&E Indaba, distinguished guests, compatriots, good evening. It gives me a great sense of honor and gratitude to welcome you all as delegates from fellow African countries, multilateral bodies and development partners, as well as participants from all spheres of the South African government, civil society, and the private sector. Our government declared 2017 as the year of O.R. Tambo in honor of our liberation struggle icon, Oliver Reginald Tambo, who was the longest-serving president of our ruling party, the African National Congress, which he led at the height of the struggle against apartheid oppression. President Tambo mobilized the international community to support our struggle against the racist apartheid regime, the campaign that influenced bodies such as the United Nations to formally declare apartheid as a crime against humanity and a threat to world peace. Oliver Tambo also led key processes from the 1989 Harare Declaration that contributed positively to the development and adoption of a democratic constitution that is lauded across the globe today. Our country is today a constitutional democracy founded on the principles of human dignity, equal rights for everyone because of O.R. Tambo's firm leadership. We are building on that legacy to create a type of society that was envisaged in the Freedom Charter and our democratic constitution. The world continues to marvel at our transition from a pariah state to an admired democracy through the fearless and tireless sacrifices of O.R. Tambo and his fellow freedom fighters and many African countries and the global community led by the United Nations. We must therefore continue to document, monitor and evaluate progress in terms of how we are meeting the ideals of human rights, the ideals of freedom, peace and development that revolutionary leaders like President Tambo fought for so hard, that we can ensure that we continuously improve the quality of our lives and the lives of our people, especially our beloved continent, Africa. Delegates, this Indaba has a very important theme, which is about opportunities and challenges for using monitoring and evaluation evidence to accelerate economic growth and employment in our continent. I'm aware that robust debate have already been started by the leadership panel that shared insights on a range of critical matters that affect our continent and humanity as a whole. Allow me briefly to add few insights drawing from our own experience of implementing planning, monitoring and evaluation programs in our country. Our country, South Africa, is implementing the National Development Plan, our Vision 2030, as the country's overarching plan. The NDP dedicates the whole chapter on matters of international relations with a strategic intent to create a better South Africa, also contributing to a better and a safer and prosperous world. We are also putting measures in place to ensure that as we implement the NDP, we must effectively align our work and also contribute meaningfully to the realization of the aspirations embodied in the AU Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, as well as the Sustainable Development Goals of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals that are championed by the United Nations Development Programme, the UNDP. Guest, I trust that through these deliberations in this Indaba, there will be cross-fertilization of ideas, peer learning from each other to ensure that our local and international development agenda do not become mere rhetoric, but are used effectively as opportunity to make a positive difference in the lives of our people in all our respective countries, so that we can collectively move this great continent forward. Monitoring and evaluation generates evidence that informs us about the progress that we are making in terms of implementing all these development agendas, these challenges that we are facing, the options that we should consider in terms of the necessary interventions to improve the quality of our policy-making decisions. And one of the critical measures that we have put in place is to ensure that we are able to measure the progress that we are making in implementing these agendas through producing credible evidence in the form of statistics as coordinated by Statistics South Africa. However, much more still needs to be done, and as a country, we stand to learn more from peer countries that are present today in this Indaba. Ladies and gentlemen, our country, South Africa, we have a range of monitoring initiatives that are aimed at generating information that helps all of us to know if we are on a right track towards attainment of development goals. Just to mention a few. 1. We monitor the implementation of the NDP, our Vision 2030, through our 5-year medium-term strategic framework, MTSF. In this regard, our government engages with monitoring evidence via a reflection on the government's program of action at least 3 times in a year. And during these engagements, our government dedicates the entire week discussing each of the 14 priority outcomes and makes strategic decisions regarding the necessary interventions that must be implemented to improve policy implementation in specific targeted areas. For instance, in the economic sector, our government engages with matters of radical economic transformation, wherein some of the key interventions relate to how our government can move the economy forward by utilizing key levers at its disposal, such as transformative procurement spending, development focus by our development finance institutions, as well as state-owned companies, and better management of mining and other licensing. We have also adopted improvement plans like the 9-point plan and the strategic infrastructure projects to reignite economic growth and also address all those structural constraints in order to effect that turnaround that the economy requires, so that it must be more inclusive. We believe that through these strategic interventions, we shall overcome the triple challenges of unemployment, poverty, and inequality that our Vision 2030 seeks to address in the long term. 2. We provide delivery support to special areas through Operation Pakeezah, which is a hurry-up methodology that we adopted from the Malaysian model of big, fast results. And through this Operation Pakeezah, we do undertake detailed operational plans and monitor with key stakeholders in society that is drawn from the private sector, civil society, other public entities, and all spheres of our government in what we refer as the laboratories of Operation Pakeezah. So far, we have successfully initiated and implemented 7 such delivery labs, and these are the Oceans Economy, scaling up the Ideal Clinic realization and maintenance program, leveraging information communications technology, the ICT, especially on basic education, galvanizing growth, investment, and employment creation along the mining value chain and mining-related communities, biodiversity, agriculture, land reform, and rural development. A total of 24.5 billion rand has already been unlocked in investments. This figure consists of 15.6 billion rand by our government and 9.1 billion rand from the private sector, as well as 1.2 billion rand private sector investment, which is now in the process of being secured. And almost 7,000 jobs have been created thus far. 3. We regularly engage our communities through Izimbizo, and these are community meetings and other frontline monitoring programs to ensure that we are listening what our people say in order to ensure that we take into account their lived experiences as evidence to improve the quality of our public services. We also monitor development progress at the coalface of service delivery in hospitals, in clinics, in schools, in police stations, in water utility points, in transport, in housing, and other infrastructure projects. This type of monitoring is also very important to ensure the use of monitoring to bring about hope to our people that their government is indeed caring and has put plans and systems in place to improve their quality of life. Ladies and gentlemen, we are inspired by the incisive words of that great revolutionary, Amilcar Cabral, who once said, and I quote, "Hide nothing from the masses of our people. Tell no lies. Expose lies whenever they are told. Mask no difficulties, mistakes or failures. Claim no easy victories." Distinguished guests, we have established a national evaluation system to produce more in-depth and objective analysis of our policies, programs, and systems to sharpen their design, their efficiency, their effectiveness, value for money, impact, and sustainability. So far, we have just 59 evaluations in the National Evaluations Plan, covering about $10 billion worth of government expenditure. Provinces and departments are also taking their own evaluations as part of institutionalizing the practice across our government, with over 400 evaluations that are planned over a period of 3 years. These evaluations allow us to go beyond what are sometimes superficial monitoring reports that take a deep dive into what is really happening in our programs and services. I regularly present these findings of evaluations to our cabinet, and just in the last month, our government considered evaluations on government action around violence against women and children, social housing, upgrading of informal settlements, and the National School Nutrition Program. All these illustrate a range of important policies and programs that are currently being evaluated. This work does help us make informed decisions on how to improve our policies as well as service delivery in specific areas to improve the effectiveness of government services. Evaluation also is a relatively new practice, and would like to continuously develop it to meet our needs. There is still a gap, though, around using evaluations, especially at municipal level, and some of the constraints relate to cost and time that it takes to undertake, especially large and rigorous evaluations. But we're exploring flexible, rapid, and yet credible evaluation approaches to facilitate ongoing decision-making. Most importantly, I would like to see evidence from monitoring and evaluation being used to hold management to account and enforce corrective measures. There must be proper, consequent management where there are transgressions. I do hope that through this Indaba, we can gather ideas on how specifically to strengthen this aspect of using evidence to ensure consequence management, whilst also managing the negative, unintended consequences of punitive measures by providing better incentives. As a lawyer myself, I believe that good legislative instruments can go a long way to addressing this aspect to ensure systematic institutionalization as well as sustainability of monitoring and evaluation practices in all our countries. Distinguished guests and delegates, the use of evidence does not happen in a vacuum. Good leadership is fundamental in giving direction and ensuring that decisions are informed by sound evidence. Through leadership, countries and multilateral bodies are able to build sound institutions and bring along people in that development path through participatory mechanisms that value collective wisdom, that value fairness, that value equity. Important bodies such as the UN, the AU, and others emerged out of decisions by leaders who realized that collective wisdom is the key solution to improve our lot. This first Africa M&E Indaba might be one of those key turning points in our journey of ensuring that monitoring and evaluation makes a difference in the lives of all our citizens. I like insights from the most recent World Development Report of 2017 that was produced by the World Bank, which summarized 3 principles for rethinking governance for development. 1. Think not only about the form of institutions, but also about their functions. Commitment, coordination, and cooperation are the key functions that underlie policy effectiveness. 2. Think not only about capacity building, but also about power asymmetrics. Power asymmetrics can lead to harmful consequences and undermine the core functions of institutions through exclusion, capture, and clientelism. As we say in South Africa, batubile, or people first. 3. Think not only about the rule of law, but also about the role of law. The report discusses 3 roles of law: in shaping behavior, in ordering power, but more importantly, in providing a tool for contestation. As legal fundis say, it's not only about the letter of the law, but it is also about the spirit of the law. It is against this background that I welcome all of you to this groundbreaking event, the first ever African Monitoring and Evaluation Indaba. It is a starting point. We're starting small, but the partners that are present here today are big enough to chart a way forward that can change the quality of life in this great continent for the better. Lastly, I would like to reflect on some of what I believe are the critical success factors that could help us to ensure that decision makers do use M&E evidence. For an example, keep it simple. Sometimes the challenge is that information is presented in a manner that is very technical and not digestible to a decision maker who has many other things to do. So, the simpler the presentation of evidence, the better the chance of its appropriate use for decision making. Make it fit for purpose. Recommendations and options sometimes for improvement should address the problem in an intelligible manner that is linked to the strategic agenda. Political decision makers are sometimes viewed as people who only want to hear only the good news. No. If analysis is rigorous enough and shows a balanced view of the situation, evidence is likely to appeal to decision makers as unbiased. In that way, we inculcate a culture of ensuring that problems are not hidden but are addressed based on credible information. Time is of essence. Pressures to make key strategic decisions are very high, so it is imperative that evidence producers, including yourselves as M&E practitioners, should gear yourselves to service the needs of decision makers more comprehensively by producing just-in-time quality evidence. Innovations in the field of modeling of social media data, especially the fourth industrial revolution, are producing opportunities for solutions in this regard that complement traditional approaches like evidence from research studies, evaluations, official statistics, as well as administrative data. Ladies and gentlemen and delegates, I trust that this M&E Indaba will not be a mere talk shop, but a serious opportunity to start a new dialogue on critical matters of common interest among African countries as well as development partners. I'm pleased to note that there is provision in your program for time to collectively reflect on practical actions that will be taken forward post this event. This is very commendable. I thank you for taking time to join us this evening, and I wish you all the best in your deliberations in the course of these 2.5 days. In those few words, I hereby launch the first ever Africa Monitoring Indaba. I thank you, Ngiyabonga.